encourages expression in all its forms. Our primary role is to strengthen and energize our community, to deepen the cultural and artistic growth of youth, to offer opportunities for people to come together in celebration of the arts, to inspire and cultivate artistic expression and education in the performing and visual arts for people of all ages and incomes. And so it's fitting that we're all here today working with our political leaders that have the courage to speak out on the importance of the arts and humanities in our to our very existence, and collaborating with our artistic leaders to navigate the challenging landscape of how the arts will be funded in the future. We must always be willing to step into the shoes of others, to see the bigger picture from a different perspective, from the perspective of other humans and not machines. Here in the Randolph area, we have hundreds of artists. We value what they bring to the table. Our historic downtown shops and restaurants are full of artists every day, without exception. Artists bring with them other artists and explorers. When they perform here at Chandler and in our galleries, our restaurants, in our schools, and on our streets, people come here to soak it all in. They come to fill up their cups. And when this hall is full, so are our restaurants. When job candidates come to interview for the many quality positions available here, they first drive through our downtown historic town, and they get a sense of the vibe here. And many that have the highbrow notion of living a better life take that job, in part because of our welcoming community, in part because of the people in this room that help make Randolph special. So you see, Randolph is indeed the heart of Vermont. So let's roll up our sleeves and find out how best to thrive, how best to do our part to make sure that all artists are encouraged to do their important work. And thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Representative Becca Balint's Arts and Humanities Community Conversation and Call to Action. That's when you applaud. A big thank you to everyone who made this event possible. Representative Balint and her team, the Chandler Center, the team of the Vermont Arts Council and the Vermont Creative Network, Vermont Humanities, the Vermont Department of Libraries, and the Vermont Library Association. A special thank you to my co-conspirator on all things statewide arts and culture, Christopher Kaufman-Ilstrup, the Executive Director of Vermont Libraries. And a big thank you to all of you for coming out on a rainy Friday afternoon to show your commitment to the incredible arts and culture community here in Vermont. I'm not breaking any news here when I say that there has been a lot going on, much of it really troubling, much of it with some serious impacts both for Vermonters, for our nation, and all around the world. And if we were going to sit up here today and list all of those things, that would be a long afternoon. Instead today, we're going to be looking at the real challenges that Vermont's arts and culture sector are facing, but we're also going to take a look at what we can do as Vermonters, as Americans, as a creative community to take action and build for the future. The news has been pretty overwhelming when it comes to arts and culture. First, the dismantling of the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Institute for Museum and Library Services. Just last Friday, the National Endowment for the Arts canceling direct grants to grantees all around the country and many here in Vermont. Also, the President's recommended budget, cutting funding for all of the cultural agencies. There's a lot to take in, and a lot of it has serious economic and long-term and short-term impacts here. At the same time, we've all seen the power that the arts and humanities and culture have to bring us together, to heal, to connect, and to inspire. And in fact, this funding is being specifically targeted because of the power that our sector has to bring people together. All of the people on the stage and many of you in this audience are affecting positive change Through your work, you're showing us how to connect with people, what it means to be human, and new ways of looking at the world. This moment requires courage and connection. Our artists and our arts organizations are being incredibly courageous among some serious odds. And through that courage, we are connecting, like today, on a rainy afternoon, with these incredible people. And you'll be hearing from all of these people, all of these committed Vermonters working to make our state a better place. We'll be in conversation with our special guest, Senator Peter Welch. And we're representing Becca Balint. Thank you to Representative Balint, and we're honored that Senator Welch could join us as well. To start things off, I'm going to hand things over to Representative Balint, who has been a national leader in defending the rights of all Americans and encouraging us to understand and use our own power and our passion. Representative Balint.
Okay, hopefully it won't buzz. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here. I want to start off by saying you are sitting in seats that just an hour ago, these seats were filled by high school artists from across the state who were sitting here with their parents and their teachers for the Congressional Art Award. And I have to tell you, they have raised the bar really high because their participation and the questions that they asked me at the end were actually very profound. They understand the role of the arts in finding our way forward. So you are stepping into their seats, and they left a lot of very good energy behind, so I hope you're feeling that. I felt a lot of excitement as people were coming in. Yes, trepidation. We are in a dark place right now, and I will talk about that, and I'm sure Senator Welch will talk about that as well. But we really want this to be a conversation that is about taking stock of where we are, being very candid and clear-eyed about where we are, but charting a way forward. So a little bit about me in terms of the arts. The arts were always a touchstone for me in my entire life. When my grandmother moved in with us when she had ill health, when I was in high school, I wasn't so much worried that I was going to give up my bedroom for my grandmother, but I needed to know that I would still have a place in the house to be able to do my art. And so I had a little corner studio in the basement, and I did a lot of drawing and cartooning and printmaking, and it's still a big part of my life. And then in high school, the performing arts was where I really found a lot of the comfort that I needed as I was trying to figure out who I was in the world. And I still perform. I play music with friends. I play mandolin and guitar. Performed at an event that the Library of Congress put together last year. And I know for me that the way that we are going to get to a better place in this country is through the arts. We know that authoritarians go after the arts and education first for a reason. And we collectively have the creativity and the spirit in order to turn us towards a better place. So I want you to understand why it was important for us to be part of holding this conversation today, because we desperately need the voice of the artists right now in a big way. The other thing I wanted to just tell you is artists are my people. I am married to a woman who is a lawyer by day, but she is an artist the rest of the time. She has a little circus opera company called Art Bender's Circus Opera. We have an aerial rig in our backyard. She's trained as an opera singer. She has she is, if she's not lawyering, she is up in the rigs doing her aerial circus opera. And having that reminder every time that I get in my car and see, we live in we have tiny postage stamp of the lawn in Brattleboro. We live in town. The aerial rig takes up most of the lawn. And right behind it is this, you know, our stacks of wood for our wood stove. It's just so Vermont, I can't even stand it. But we talk about the arts all the time. And my mother is a martial artist. She still performs in her 80s. And so I am your people. I understand the importance of the arts, not just in nurturing us individually, but nurturing us as a nation. And so very happy to be hosting this conversation, and I'm curious about all the things that are going to come up, and I'm hoping that we will have a really great, enriching conversation that will give us all hope and some light. So I am a glass half full kind of gal. And in tragedy, I always see opportunity, and I hope that we will feel that way as we are leaving from this conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. And so we are delighted to have Senator Welch-Peter with us. He was in the neighborhood, and we found out at the last minute that it would work out, and we're just so excited that he's here, because while I'm fighting the fight on the House side, Peter's over there fighting the fight on the Senate side, and I know he also absolutely believes in the arts and humanities and what it does for all of us individually and collectively. So thanks so much for taking the time to be here.
Becca, thank you so much. Becca, thank you so much for organizing this, and I saw that Becca was doing it, and I asked if I could crash, and she said, why not? You know, we know you're a senator, and that's kind of sketchy, but and I also, did you do the arts competition here today? That was started by then Congressman Jim Jeffords. It's gone national, but it's an indication of what has been in the bones of Vermonters forever. He started it and carried on. Now, I used to do it when I had the job Becca has, and now Becca's doing a great job of it. And the participation is enormous. And, you know, a couple of things on the arts very quickly. Number one, it's so important for kids. We know that. And the educational opportunities that everyone here is allowing is immense. It's really important for the reason Becca said. It's a way of finding who you are, and it's a way of getting confidence in who you are. And that is incredibly important. The arts are really important in downtowns. You know, we get a culture downtown where people are going to performance or whatever it is they're going to, and it helps the local businesses and creates a sense of community. But you know, you alluded to this, Becca, and I think this is the key. How is it that one of the first things that the new President of the United States does is abolish or try to the National Endowment for Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts? How is that? I mean, that's like just so horrible. And it is because the arts are dangerous. What all of us are doing in life is trying to figure out who we are and how to live in this world. It's fairly complicated, how to figure out who we are. And the arts are critical. And they're critical oftentimes of authority. And an authoritarian does not like criticism. So Becca is absolutely right that authoritarians go after the arts right of way because they are dangerous. And that is why it's absolutely so important for us in Vermont, where we have this tradition of respect and appreciation for the importance of the arts to help us find our way, to be critical that makes us think about where our shortcomings are and where we have to do better. So in this Trump era, we have to push back every way we can, and sustaining and promoting and respecting the arts is like job number one to get us back to where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Welch and Representative Balint. We are so appreciative of your leadership on behalf of all Vermonters. And today, we have an incredible panel with us. I'll introduce them, and then we'll get to hear a little bit from everybody. So starting all the way down at the end, we have Mary Danko, who's the Executive Director of the Fletcher Free Library in Burlington and President of the Vermont Library Association. We have Jody Freed, who's the executive director, I just said that word a lot because all these people are executives. Executive director of Catamount Film and Arts. We have Christopher Mosley, who's the executive director of Middlebury's Henry Sheldon Museum. We have Elizabeth Pressware, who's the executive director of the Governor's Institutes of Vermont. Then Steve Perkins, maybe just give a little wave. So maybe Steve Perkins, the executive director of the Vermont Historical Society. Pavan Lukuman, the executive director of the Green Mountain Film Festival and Montpelier Center for Arts and Learning. Eric Ford, the director of programming partnership at Vermont Public. You may have seen him. You may have seen him on TV on the Make Here films as well. And Rose Friedman, the founder and executive director of the Civic Standard in Hartford. So let's hear about it. Let's hear about how you're facing this moment. I think just based on order, maybe if, we'll start with Mary down at the end. And Mary, we know that libraries in Vermont and around the nation have been really impacted by the ending of IMLS grants. Libraries are the backbone of our rural communities and our downtowns. They're about way more than books. They're the foundation of our little d democracy. So can you talk about how Vermont libraries are being impacted and how they're coming together to respond?
Sure, it's been a lot. It's been going on, since 2016 with the challenges on our books and our programs and our displays. But, as the Vermont Library Association, we try to be really mindful of the legislation that is out there and support when that's happening. Last year in Vermont, there was some great legislation that helped us with our collection development policy. We were excited when Attorney General Charity Clark filed against the Trump administration about the IMLS cuts, and so we stepped up and said, how can we help? Can we write a letter of support? I'm happy to say that judgment came down yesterday in favor of IMLS. However, we are always vigilant about whatever the next budget year is coming and how we have to advocate in that way. We go to protests when we can. We support each other. We really are starting to think about the erosion of democracy that you alluded to. As you said, the erosion comes in as attacking all these cultural agencies that are about bringing us together, right? Which is about connection, which happens at our libraries. But as libraries, we're also very concerned about the Constitution right now and freedom of speech. Freedom of speech lives on our library shelves. And so, we have really concerns, and so a lot of libraries are stepping up and doing programming on that and having our communities understand that connection.
It's great. That's great. I just envision a protest full of librarians is one that I would not want to mess with. That sounds very serious and dynamic. And I so appreciate the work that the Vermont Library Association has done around connecting networks, especially our most rural networks. So another example on stage, and feel free to jump in, either one of you, at any point, but I'll direct to these folks and you two can jump in. So Steve Perkins of the Vermont Historical Society, can you talk a little bit about those rural networks that the Historical Society has in buildings, but you're really working statewide, and what have the IMLS cuts meant for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Steve Perkins, Director of Vermont Historical Society. I think everybody knows about our rich collections that you can come research, but more than half of our operation is providing support both in classrooms and teaching children how to be good historians and thinkers and thinking of all stories and perspectives and all sorts of wonderful things like that. And also supporting 191 local historical societies and small museums around Vermont, vast majority of which are volunteer organizations, and working with them to, again, understand how they can best tell the stories of their local communities, how they can preserve their collections, how they can be inclusive in the story that they tell in Vermont to build better communities. And we were recognized nationally for that last year. So IMLS, which you all know, was on the chopping block, and all of the grants to museums were rescinded a month ago. We were one of only 8 organizations in the country that was awarded a workforce development grant because of the work that we're doing with the local societies and small museums in Vermont, in working on how to be a great museum, how to represent your community in all the ways that we all understand that to be here in Vermont. So that grant was cut, and we had to lay off an employee that was doing that work. So that's the immediate impact of those cuts on us. We had some donors step forward, not that they should have had to do that, but step forward to allow us to continue the program through October. But I'm also here to say that we will continue to do that work. It's part of our mission, it's part of what we do. We have a set of values for the Vermont Historical Society, and one of those values uses the words diversity and equity and inclusion, and we're not changing that.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm so glad you brought up the importance of public funding and private funding. That all of the organizations you see on stage, many of you who are involved in the arts in the audience, your funding comes from a combination of public and private sources. And when it comes to public funding, you are the donors, we are the donors, because we pay our taxes. And then we elect people to make decisions about how those tax dollars are going to be spent. And the highest and best use of those tax dollars is reinvesting them in our communities in lots of ways, including through the arts. So, Steve, you talked about the importance of local communities too, and really diving deep into a community. So, Kevin, can you talk about the work that you're doing with the film festival and really how that's so community-based?
Sure, thanks. Hi, Balint. I am the festival director for the Green Mountain Film Festival, which in 2026 will have its 25th production, so please come next March. Some of you here in the audience, I recognize you are fans of that festival, and it's only been allowed to continue and flourish because of the community support that it is naturally generated since it's actually 1997. So we are continuing to work very closely with the downtown businesses, which is it requires quite a lot of patience and creativity because, as many of you know, Montpelier was flooded 2 years in a row, and right now there's this huge construction happening downtown. So the businesses are really struggling, and I don't think that they would be shy about talking about that. So we try to partner with as many local organizations and anyone who's interested to fold them into this festival so it can really become a representation of the community, what it desires for itself, what it desires to know, and its own expression. So we target different groups. So we solicit from the senior center, we solicit from the schools to make sure that everyone feels that they are included and involved. And the work that we show, of course, this festival can't happen without the films that everyone comes to see. We definitely make a point to try to show and represent stories that wouldn't normally show in a regular commercial theater, not because they wouldn't think of it, but because we're not driven by profit, and we are driven by stories and the desire for our community to have these conversations about whatever is going on. So that's what we're doing with the Green Mountain Film Festival, and we hope to be able to continue that on into the future.
That's great. And that importance of storytelling is something that is one of the real powers of the arts, right? To help us see ourselves, to help us see other people. So Eric, speaking of films, can you talk a bit about the work that you're doing at Vermont Public, specifically supporting Vermont's own homegrown filmmakers and some of the immense pressures that public media is under right now, and how you're working to combat that too?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having us all. This is amazing. It's true, public media is under threat right now. It's not something new, actually. It's been happening for over 50 years, but it seems different somehow right now. So, and it's not insignificant. The support we receive from the Corporation of Public Broadcasting is not an insignificant amount of money, so it would affect us. We see ourselves not only as a place for independent, non-commercial journalism, of course, and all of the PBS and NPR programming that everyone loves and cares about, but also as a place, a home for arts and culture here in the state. I can talk about a couple of things. We'll talk about film as well, but whether it's performances on our classical service, dozens a year with local performers, or a program like Vermont Edition, which regularly features authors, poets, musicians, filmmakers, artists. Just this last month, we had several Vermont poets for Poetry Month. So another example of the way that we're helping to support the creative economy here in Vermont. As the producer of the series Made Here for the last 9 years, present documentary films from New England and Quebec. And I was actually running some numbers just to see how many Vermont films, over 250 Vermont films we've broadcast in the last 9 years, which feels pretty great. And we've given out over $200,000 in licensing fees to be able to do that too as well. So we're very committed to not only supporting the exhibition of work here, but also helping to support the economy so that people can stay here in the state and continue to share their work with everyone here. And so we hope to continue doing that. We're going to keep fighting as we always do, and yeah, we're not going anywhere.
So those local homegrown stories, the Sheldon Museum has an incredible example of a local homegrown story that you're bringing forward in this time of division as a way to really connect with students, with your community. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Coco Mosley from the Sheldon Museum in Middlebury. Thanks so much for having us and hearing our stories today. So, the Sheldon Museum has been engaged in a multi-year project to reimagine the museum and share new stories that have been undertold in the history of Vermont. And as part of that, one of the stories that we are really committed to sharing more broadly is the story of Charity and Sylvia. They are often recognized as the oldest on-record LGBTQ couple in the United States, and they lived in Weybridge, Vermont in the early 19th century. The Sheldon we're incredibly lucky to steward their archival collection, which includes these tender love poems, this beautiful, delicate double silhouette they have where they braided their hair together in a heart around their images. And so one of our big projects with Charity and Sylvia is to really grow the educational opportunities related to this collection. So through funding from Vermont Humanities, 2 grants last year, we were able to launch our pilot curriculum, which is called Charity and Sylvia, Identity, True Love, and Community. It's an open source curriculum available on our website for any educator to use. And it invites students to be curious historians and to delve into the archive, not only to learn about Charity and Sylvia, but to learn about who they are and to learn about where we're going and who we want to be. And one of the things that the team at the Sheldon, we really remain committed to is, a commitment to recognizing that LGBTQ plus history and stories and relationships are a foundational part of this nation's history.
Thank you.
America's history cannot be told without the voices of Charity and Sylvia, the voices of people of color, of immigrants, of women, of disabled folks in our community and across the nation. And so as an organization, we are really working to support that complex, fuller story. And last thing, I know I'm going on, but especially now with the Trump administration and their efforts to rewrite history as one narrow story, we really need this variety of voices and stories in the public dialogue. And Vermont Humanities to that kind of capacity building at rural organizations. The Sheldon is a small museum in a rural state. We don't have the kind of fundraising capacity or large endowments to support this work without the support of the taxpayers and the federal programs that are, come through Vermont Humanities and the Vermont Arts Council. Thank you.
So you talked a lot about the impact that this is having on students too, how you're bringing Vermont history to students to help them understand themselves. Elizabeth, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're the director of the Governor's Institutes of Vermont, also the Governor's Institute of the Arts. Recently had a big loss from the NEA, and also I got the chance to visit the Governor's Institute 2 years in a row now, and it's like some of my favorite days of the year. The students are amazing, the work of bringing them together is amazing. So can you share a bit about that with us?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Elizabeth Frascoya, and I'm the Executive Director of the Governor's Institutes of Vermont, but I am the former Director of the Arts Institute specifically, and it's very near and dear to my heart because I think back to myself as a young 15-year-old Vermonter. I had long braids, I had braces. I don't know if anybody else experienced this awesomeness. But I also played the trombone. And so braces plus trombone. Yes, right, we have any other brass people in the house? Yes! Okay, we'll have a little, coffee clash later. Braces plus trombone is like no bueno. But I went to the Arts Institute as this nerdy, lovely, excited young person and found my people. I found out that I could develop those skills that were starting in me, and my confidence was nurtured, my talent was nurtured, and people believed in me. And that did wonders for my self-confidence, for my mental health, right? Like at the time I wouldn't have said mental health, but now with the conversation, like that's what that is. That is belonging, that is acceptance, that's identity building. That is what the Governor's Institute does. This year we're gonna serve 640 young people across a lot of different topics, but 190 of them will be artists. We have already accepted them. And so last Friday when we got an email from the NEA saying, sorry, the $30,000 that we've been giving you for a decade is not coming. Well, I'm sorry, we already bought everything and we hired everybody, and all those students, we made commitments to them, so they will be there. And I'm really excited to welcome them. We have to nurture these things in our young people. It is really important. Can I tell one quick story? Because I did not know about my wife's service situation. Just so beautiful, and like we must nurture those quirky things about ourselves. There's a young person from last year's institute who should probably meet her because he came and he didn't kind of find his place. Our institute is 2 weeks long. It involves writing, theater, filmmaking, visual art, all kinds of things. But he didn't quite sort of find his niche. But halfway through, someone came to do a circus workshop, and he learned how to ride a unicycle. And so this young person spent the second week riding his unicycle everywhere, all over the Vermont State University Castleton campus, and that became part of, woven into his identity, and he found his place in this spot. So we must be there for those young people, and thank you for being here.
And that idea and necessity of finding your place, it's not just for kids, too. Rose, can you talk about the work of the Civic, really, and what you were doing so incredibly in Hardwick to find belonging for everyone in your community to come together through the arts and culture?
My name is Rose Friedman, and the Civic Standard is headquartered in the former newspaper office in the center of Main Street in Hardwick. We are a small cultural community center, is what we call ourselves, based really in the belief that there should be a cultural office on the main street of every town in the state and in this country. But I waited about 40 years for the government to figure that out, and then I just decided we're
do it in one town, at the very least, so that I would get to experience what that reality would look like. I think that there is a tremendous amount of magical thinking and imagination that's required to make art and to support culture building work. And it's sort of the power that we have is to be fantastical and to do things that don't make sense. Certainly don't make economic sense. They don't make logical sense in the sense of the logic of the empire, but they make sense in some kind of very deep human way that people recognize sort of beyond words, beyond theory. So when we do things at the Civic, I often am shocked by how quickly people understand what we mean in a deeper way. Like an invitation to be part of a program, sure, there's the actual program that's happening, but people understand deeper down what's going on. I'll just tell a very quick story because there's many programs we run in many different locations in town, which is by design. What we're trying to do is reach people across difference, which, you know, Hardwick is a town of 3,000 people, but there's a lot within that 3,000, and there's a lot of ways people don't see each other. People are invisible to each other. So how do we actually share cultural experiences and become visible to each other is a lot of what we're grappling with. A few years ago when we were starting out, you know, I've for years looked at my community and looked at the people in it and wondered, why doesn't that person come to the show at the townhouse? Or why hasn't that person signed their kid up for the camp yet? And so this organization is sort of a roof for like considering that question in a really deep and intentional way. At the beginning, there were these boys that ride their skateboards up and down Main Street to the chagrin of every driver. It's a very intense relationship between them and the drivers of Hardwick. So what happened was I just opened the door one day and I was like, hey guys, you should come in. I've got cookies inside. It's so creepy. It's okay. And they were like, why? And I was like, because we're going to work on building a skate park. I was like, why did I just say that? And they were like, oh, okay. And so they came inside. And I was like, now we have to build a skate park. I don't even skateboard, and I don't know why I would do that. But then began like years of commitment to seeing that through because they kept showing up for meetings. And then they were like, are we a cooperative or a collective? I think we're a collective. Okay, now we're a collective, so everybody's going to have equal say in how this works, and how are we going to possibly do this? Well, we should start fundraising, even just to buy snacks for our meetings. So we made sweatshirts that say Hardwick Skate Park Collective, and we sold a bunch of those, and they kept coming. And then after a while, I mean, we had meetings with the town and the school, and whoever we could have a meeting with. We found a skate park builder who lived in town, who got interested in the thing. We started writing grants for some support, but it was like, where is this thing going to go, and insurance and all stuff. And then I could feel the energy of the kids waning, because this is a project that is going to go beyond their time in town, likely. If they leave after high school, they're not going to see this to fruition. So I was like, we got to build something fast. So we started to get the plans together to build a portable mini ramp. And we've spent the last several months trying to figure out where's that ramp going to go in town, and everybody has said no. And our insurance agent was like, we're not covering that for you. And it got to the point where we had all the materials that had been dropped off by the hardware store in somebody's backyard, and I had the carpenters volunteering their time, and I had the boys signed up, and we had the cookies and everything, and I didn't know when we built this thing where the heck it was going to go. So I called the town manager at 6:45 in the morning last Saturday in a complete anxiety panic, like, what's going to happen? Should I send it all back to the hardware store? And he was like, this is what public projects are. You got to do it. You made a commitment to the kids, you made a commitment to the town, you have to see it through. I'm going to figure it out. And he called me back later that day and said, fire chief said it can go behind the firehouse, the town is going to take care of the insurance. We know that it's coming down the pike for us, but we also know that like we are always doing this completely chaotic, last minute, make it work, put a band-aid on it, you know, tie it together with duct tape. However, we shouldn't have to do that. We should never have to do any of this. None of us should be spending as much time as we spend on grant reports. We should be doing our magical thinking and building universes. And I like to just try to think beyond all of this stuff and hold this image of the cultural office on Main Street that is paid for by the federal government and not paid for by scrappy grants all pasted together.
These organizations, they show up for the community shows up for them, and they build something amazing that we need. And then when we do those things, if we're attracting our community, then we're attracting other people who want to come to Vermont too. So I'm going to turn it over to Jody and ask you if you can talk about what's happening in Vermont. Sometimes we say in Vermont, oh, we're just a bubble, but we are not. We are part of a nation, we're part of an international community. We have an international border right up north. And there are some big geopolitical things happening with everyone and our northern neighbors. So can you talk a little bit about the impact of the relationship between the U.S. and Canada right now, which, as someone who lived in Canada for a long time, is not something I ever thought I would have to say on a stage. Can you talk about how that is impacting your work and anything?
Sure. So Jody Freed, Executive Director of Catamount Film and Arts in St. Johnsbury, and tomorrow is our 50th birthday. So as soon as we called this morning, I was like setting up chairs with Jay Craven and the portable. We're going to do Limelight, which was the first film that was screened 50 years ago tonight. The Canadian border, the numbers are really stark. Conversation with Heather Pelham at the Vermont Department of Travel and Tourism, we're looking at probably 30 to 35% impact in this coming year. The Northeast Kingdom is going to be disproportionately impacted by that. In the last 24 hours, I reached out or was in meetings with folks from the Northeast Kingdom Chamber of Commerce, the ski areas. I spoke with Ski Bright up at Jay Peak. They're seeing roughly a 30% impact to their season pass sales. They're seeing golf groups that are canceling. We're preparing for what looks like about a 35% drop in again, their visitation. And the numbers are supporting that if we look at it in terms of credit card spending. If you look at January, February, then a drop off in March, and what's continuing forward in February, into April. We're seeing the same numbers if we look at it in terms of the border crossings and then the recrossing back in the time that people are spending. And there's also been polls that have been done where they're reaching out to just see the comfort level within our Canadian friends. And over 40% right now are saying they don't feel welcome in the US. And over 30% are indicating that they are going to be unwilling to cross that border and spend funds where they have in the past. For us, that's tremendous in the Northeast Kingdom because while it's 30% statewide, it's 30% for us. In terms of the overall impact, it's huge in the Northeast Kingdom. We're dependent on places like Kingdom Trails, the ski areas, and then the ripple effect through all of the surrounding businesses. So that's the reality. That's what we're facing. There's no short-term solutions that we see in sight. As it's starting to settle within us, we're looking at this as a longer-term issue, and then the question becomes, what's the action? What do we do about it? And so at this moment, what we're doing is we're really trying to look at how can we be more welcoming in terms of our product. How do we create something, whether it's offering things on par to try and counteract the tariffs, whether it's hanging Canadian flags, creating a welcoming environment for the folks, make sure that they know when they come here that they're welcome. But the second piece of that is how do we get the word out about that? How do we get, how do we spread the word? How do we create some sort of a new reality there? So this is where the power of the arts and where we're bringing people together. We have a tremendous amount of organizations in Vermont. In the Northeast Kingdom, we have a high density of events in the summer. And so we're trying to come together around those create opportunities that we can bring forward. So how do we create an event where we break bread, we have the food, we have the recreation, we have that arts component, and we welcome folks to come into our community, whether they're from Canada, and specifically to this question, or from other groups that we can bring in, perhaps that haven't been vacationing here as much. And I have a couple of examples I'll just share with you. We work with different organizations in the Northeast Kingdom and private business owners, and we last, I think 2 weeks ago, we had our advisory council meeting. And our advisory council is made up of business CEOs, of librarians, of educators, superintendents, principals. I mean, we have people across all different fields. And we asked the question, in this moment when things are so difficult, should we be pushing forward, or should we be pulling back and battening down the hatches? Should we be getting prepared? And universally across all those different sectors, what we heard is that the arts need to be pushing forward and leading. That right now, in this moment, the need is cross sectors. There's nobody being spared. And we are the glue that holds so many of these communities together. We are such integral parts of the weaving of the rural community and landscape. And so we need to be right at the forefront there and with their support. And I think for all of us, a point of action is, where do we have those relationships outside of our traditional nonprofit or public? Where can we look to the other sectors? Where can we look to folks that are benefiting because of the things that we're doing, to be there as advocates for us and to push forward in a very different time? So it's going to be a pivot for us. It's going to be a change for us. But leaning into our strength right now, I think, is going to be just absolutely critical for the state of Vermont, and really for us as a country. At the end of the day, arts, culture, and creativity are at the heart of almost every community you go into, whether it's a city block in an urban area, or it's a rural, small village like Hardwick. Right at the center of that, the interconnective tissue that's holding that together from the civic and the economic standpoint is arts, culture, and creativity.
So I'm hearing a lot of things that are happening and things that we can do. Obviously, build a skate park is the first of those things. Check out a book in your library. Make more art, see more art, learn your local history, connect with the young people around you. There's so much happening that we can do. Did we miss anything? Is there anything? I'm going to put you all on the spot now. We probably don't have time for everyone to respond. But if anybody wants to add on, what do you think we should be doing? Did we cover it? Is there anything in there that we're missing?
We just all have to tap into our fearlessness each and every day. That I gave a speech on the floor of the House the other day. This isn't going to fade away. This darkness, this force right now that is coming after the arts, coming after humanities, coming after who we are as Americans, it's not just going to fade away. It's going to take all of us to be as bold and as fierce as we can be. And on some days when we're not feeling like we have it, we tap somebody else in and they go in and do it. But we cannot allow this administration to pick us off one by one. We have to stand together.
I know there are also some questions from the audience. We're going to turn to that, and I will get those from Jessica. Thank you. Okay. All right, so these were, thank you all for your great questions, that we've gone through them and collated where we can. This is a great one. I can just say this. Thank you for this reminder. For those people who are being impacted in the cultural sector, we want to remind everyone that there are resources on our website also and ways that you can participate, including a survey from Americans for the Arts, which is a national arts advocacy group, who is working to report the impacts of federal actions. So if you have not filled out that survey and your organization has been impacted, please do. Thank you for doing that. And a great reminder, Fred. All right, now questions. Go to the
My team here just handed me some great news. For those of you who've been sharing the case of Ramesa Ozturk, she has just been released by Judge Sessions.
Because when we push back and work together, there's nothing we can't do. Thank you. Okay, so this is from someone who is presenting performing arts at a higher education institution. And we can open this up to anyone. I think these questions are mainly for the senator and the representative. There are layers of concern in this higher ed institution about executive orders concerning the arts, foreign nationals, DEI, gender. For an organization that's committed to moving forward, how would you both suggest that we can go about understanding, reacting to, and making decisions about how to operate in this executive order worldscape that we're in?
You know, what Rose said, I think really is right. It's full speed ahead. You don't have the support that we're entitled to have from our federal government with your taxpayer dollars. And I think Becca, regrettably, is clear-eyed that we've got a new administration that's on a rampage. This is totally different than the first Trump administration, where there were some moderating, tempering voices. We've got folks who are fully and completely on board and are acting in very arbitrary ways and abusing power every single day, and that is the method of operation. So it's not going to get over easily. On the other hand, accepting that reality is not accepting what the outcome has to be. That's where we continue to have agency and have to help one another. And we're seeing good news that we just got from a Vermont court, from a young woman who was arrested by masked agents in Boston and then sent to Louisiana, where the hope was she'd be gone forever. But we got her, the lawyers got her back, and then the judiciary came and did its job. So, you know, day by day we've got to keep fighting. But on the arts organizations, it's so heartbreaking for Becca, right, and me. You know, we're excited when there's a grant that comes back to help you do your job. And it's a really important job because it's like a commitment to our kids and to our community and to our future. And why shouldn't there be our resources, your taxpayer dollars, on a steady basis, giving stability so that you can follow through on the commitments that you make and take advantage of so many people who are willing to volunteer in your organizations or work for a lot less than they could be paid elsewhere. But the fact that it's a harder job to do actually underscores that it's a more important job to do. So can we get the community support? You know, can we get government officials like your wonderful town manager in Hardwick, who just find a way to help when you've got a community that includes everyone from the person who initiates it, like Rose, to those kids that are outside, and the last thing they want to do is any work, but the first thing they want to do is work if it means we get a skate park, right? So the work is more important than ever, even though it's more difficult than ever.
So the thing I would say is, I know that there's a real tension right now with organizations and certainly institutions of higher ed, of this sense of like, I don't want to draw attention to myself, I don't want to be a target. And I want to say, there are some organizations that have a little bit more cultural capital, have a little bit more privilege, that in this moment need to be doing more. They need to be having that full-throated, clear-eyed commitment to preserving programs, because there are other organizations that need them to stick up for them. And so I will say it again, this administration knows We pick people off one by one, we pick organizations off one by one. So I started to an institution of higher ed. I said, you have to reach out to the other institutions of higher ed, not just in Vermont, but in New England and across the country. You must speak with one voice because you're all losing out. And I know it's tough. It's tough to figure out how do you get your board on board, your faculty, all of those things. But I can tell you, if we don't stick together, we will all suffer terribly because of it. And right now, the person that is really a hero for me is the governor of Maine, who she said to Trump, I'll see you here. And she won. And she won. And people thought that she was wrong to stick her neck out, but she was not. And we need more of that.
Thank you. This next question is one that you both have heard a lot recently as members of Congress. I know you're both not in the majority party, and what we hear a lot when grants are canceled and things happen is, but isn't this illegal? Why isn't Congress doing something about this? You can talk about that specifically to the arts or kind of on a broader scale, but when people ask you that, you know, what is Congress doing? What do you say to them?
It depends what kind of mood I'm in and if I'm sober. Yeah, we're fighting as hard as we can. Your delegation is fighting as hard as we can. And a couple things. We, as members of Congress, we don't have standing to sue. And a lot of people don't realize that. We can't bring cases, but we are working with outside partners at every possible opportunity to bring those cases, and we're winning a lot in the courts. If you're not following the work of Democracy Forward, I encourage you to do that. Skye Perman is the head lawyer there. They're handling a lot of the cases against this administration, so please follow their work. A lot of the work that we're doing, you will never see on TV. You will never see it on social media, but the work is happening. And there are certainly those few things that break through that you can point to, but it is the day-to-day work we're doing in committee to fight for these programs, to fight our colleagues who seem to have lost their way in every possible configuration. And so I know it's tough in this moment when there's so much anxiety and fear to tell you the work is happening. We're using every possible lever. And the part of the problem is the ecosystem of information is completely and totally stacked against Democrats right now and independents. And I won't break it all down for you because we don't have time. But I need you to understand, for every one person that you see on TV, a Cory Booker, or a Jasmine Crocker, or AOC, there are 20 more on that day who did something consequential and profound that you're not seeing. And our battle right now is how to push through this ecosystem of information that is not covering the stories of what's happening on Capitol Hill.
Thanks, Becca. You know, the hardest job in my office, and Becca, maybe in yours, young people who are in the front office and answering the phone. Because I get calls from Vermonters. And the call is, why isn't Peter doing more? Why won't Peter stop it? And I understand that. It's not an indictment so much as it is a plea about how is this world we've lived in come to where we are now. And it's as though, you know, Vermonters go about their lives and they help their neighbors and they do things, and they see the horrible things we've done that are illegal, unconstitutional, and cruel. And you think about cutting out USA and leaving food in a warehouse when right outside the door they're starving children. Okay? Trump did that. Kids are dying. So Vermonters think if they explain it to me, I'll be able to explain it to my colleagues. And they'll say, oh, yeah, whoops, just a mistake. Look, this is the President of the United States who is doing this with people who are surrounding him and egging him on, and they want to keep doing it. What's so different for us, I think, Becca, and you and me, aside from being in the minority, and that's why these midterm elections are going to be so important, where we have 47 votes in the Senate, not 53, and you're, what, 3 or 4 shy in the House. Is that normal tool where you go to committee and when you have a vote and you push your bill? It doesn't work. So we're all struggling to find other ways to demonstrate we're fighting and to unpack and reveal to people who aren't quite yet as aware as many of you are the real concrete bad things that Trump is doing and the effects that it's going to have. Because these bad effects, by the way, like the tariffs or the arts, in red states there's people just like us on this panel who are totally committed, and the folks that they represent are getting hammered, okay? So, you know, Becca, you organized that demonstration at the State Department, and you got a huge turnout of colleagues. I went to the prison and visited in St. Albans, Mosen, who, you know, once again, he got out. But these are not what we would normally see as in our job description. And both you and I did something I think we never would have done. We voted actually to implement a shutdown. And that's not anything you ever in my mind I would have done. But the extraordinary circumstances that we have require extraordinary action. So all of us have to do what we can, but we have to do it with the awareness that we have to think anew. Business as usual does not work. And it's going to be more than just members of Congress in the next election. It's going to be more of these demonstrations where people are out on the streets and they're expressing their horror at what's happening and their optimism and their hope and their commitment to getting us back to principles of democracy in a community. Thank you.
We also have the questions that are on many artists' minds, which is how do I get my project funded? So I wanted to take a quick moment to say that in all of this, funding for the state arts agencies from the NEA is still intact. There are open grants available that we encourage you to apply for on the Vermont Arts Council website. Vermont Humanities funds their grants actually with private philanthropy, so they have grant funding available even though they have lost a significant chunk of federal funding. So we encourage you to keep applying. As federal agencies potentially reopen grants, there's an interesting discussion there too about applying for those. I also think that we need people to keep applying because we don't want to have a tremendous decrease in applications so that people will say, oh look, they're not applying anyway, we don't need that money, because we know that's not true. So there are still funding sources available, never enough in America, we know, and we're happy to talk to any of you who have questions about that. I'll wrap up with one last question, which is what can Vermont's creative sector do for you, for both of you? How can we be helpful to the hard work that you're doing?
It's very simple. We need you to continue to create in any possible way that you can. We need you to continue to bring more and more people into doing any kind of action. There isn't one thing or one person or one vision that is going to turn the tide on us. It's going to take all of our voices and every even small thing that you're doing in your communities around art to bring people together across difference, that helps us because we need critical mass right now. Yesterday, on the floor of the House of Representatives, the majority had us voting on whether we would change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. That was our one piece of business for the day. We need all of us to understand that democracy is an experiment, it's an idea, it only works if we're all doing our part, and arts are integral to this. The writers, the performers, that's what we need. We need you to keep creating and keep inspiring others to get involved in whatever way they can.
Well, I just, Becca, you said it well, really well. I also really appreciate you convening everyone and allowing me to be part of this, and it's so wonderful to be with you. The only additional thing I'd say is your work matters. You know, those kids that come in, they're no less in desperate desire to do something and find themselves today than they were yesterday. And doing that, you have to have confidence. And I know you do, that it matters. You know, your story about being a young girl with braces and trying to find out, those kids are out there, as you know. And it matters that each of those kids is going to be well served and be a better person and someday be sitting on this stage. And it gets that opportunity. So even though it's discouraging and we're all dismayed about what's happening in DC, it doesn't diminish the incredible importance of why you went into doing your work in the first place. And all those younger Vermonters who are going to benefit if you keep the faith, they're going to be strong in replacing us and carrying on. So thank you.
So early on in my tenure in Congress, my chief got a call from the Obama Foundation. And they said, would your boss be interested in meeting with Barack Obama? Well, yeah, of course. I'll have to ask me twice. I thought it was going to be a photo op. I thought it was going to be, we're all going to get together, he was going to take some pictures and be done with it. He spent an hour and a half with us, a small group of new members of Congress, and we could ask him anything. And the only rules were we couldn't post about it. We couldn't upload things to social media. But what came out of that conversation for me was a North Star, and he said, we have to get better about telling stories. All of us. We have to tell more meaningful, consequential stories that connect us. And this has been a theme for almost every single person who spoke. You're in the business of, creating stories, telling stories, sharing stories. That's what we all have to be doing in earnest. And Rose, something that you said, the chief said to you, you made a commitment to these boys, you gotta follow through. It occurred to me that that's what we're all doing right now. We have made a commitment to each other by being in this conversation, by understanding that we're gonna continue to invest our energy and our talents into art because it's a commitment that we make to each other to continue to inspire and give each other vision and give each other hope when things are so dark. And so what I want you to know is that I understand that people are so anxious and scared and angry and concerned. How are we going to round the corner on this? I have so much faith in the human capacity for creativity and for compassion. And I am someone who wakes up every day that says, how do I use the tools that I have, the gifts that I have to continue to make these connections, to continue not just to inspire my team, but hopefully that will have ripple effects outside of me. I think we all have to sort of have that sense of purpose every day right now. Because it's on all of us, every single one of us. And it's the reason why I wear these bright, sparkly shoes. I have a mad shoe game. And it's because I need to see the sparkle. I need to see the joy. I need to see that thing that catches my eye, that reminds me, continue to shine. And that's what I need from everyone here today. I know it's hard. We all have to keep digging deep and just keep being the incredibly creative people that you are, because it gives everyone around you hope and inspiration. So thank you.
So we have talked about the arts for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and we have not actually seen any art. So that is the cardinal sin of arts presenters, that we just talk about it, when really we need to experience it. So I'm going to invite Raji Evans up to the stage, a tremendously talented spoken word performer and poet who is going to share his art with us as a way to close the program.
Blessings to you all, for who you are and for all you do. I speak life and faith and optimism, positive energy and greater possibilities. This piece is called A Call to Artists, Calling. Calling all artists, makers of art and those who trust in its value as sacred, the makers of new worlds, tenders of the fires of imagination, shapers of nations and realities, cultivators of what life can be. We need your magic, your steadfast, unapologetic refusal to give up hope in the fantastic, especially when things get drastic. Calling all artists, lovers of music that plucks the heartstrings, celebrators and honorers of life and new things in all its many facets and how we do things. Calling all beautifiers, awakeners of human conscience, seamers and weavers of our tapestry of stories, the one we all have a thread in, calling on, providers of soft landings for childhood, makers of what can be into being, definers of the possible, and fiery defiers of the impossible. We need your shoulders to the wheel. We need that childlike stubbornness, strong as steel, that refuses to leave the playground, that says we will find a way to give faith and hope and love and freedom sway, that we will find a way to bless our children to see brilliance in the light of day, to use the very tools that imagination creates, to safeguard art that breathes into our hearts new scapes, rebirths our world with deeper worth, new forms and shapes. Yes, calling all painters, poets, potters, put your pens to the page, shape the clay of this land. We need your undivided attention, your unrelenting commitment to the notion we are worthy of redemption. We are calling on the spirits of those who made a way out of no way, this way, the finders of lost paths, the openers of new dimensions, crafters of community. Flood this place in time and space with color. Let not the drab and stoic march toward hopeless defeat take away our dancing feet, our singing voices, our songs, our song, sung in unison, is calling. We are calling on bigger ideas than war and attacks on the poor, and the banning of books and lauding of crooks, and the telling of lies and cultivating despise, and the trampling of rights and the gambling of plights. We are calling on your heart and your hands and your mind and your stance. Say calling. On you to visualize a vision bright enough to bless your great-great-great-grands. Yes, we are calling. On you, on we, on us being free to heed this in unity in our shared calling. Calling. To break free from collusion with silence and a xenophobic craze. Calling. Past confusion and violence to the love have center stage. Calling. Your empathy, your energy to leave apathy and antipathy behind. Calling. For your spine. Calling. To put your behind on the bottom line. Calling. Like never and more and than ever the before. For your righteous core, clever to endeavor to soar. Calling. On believers in our allegiance can bring miracles forth from a spiritual source that also brought these lyrics to course. Calling. On your blood and your bones and everyone in your home and everything that you've known to come. Calling. This is our call to arms that embrace warmly and grace every face through this storm. Calling. On the spirit of creativity to rescue creativity. Know that we hold the key and the remedy. Calling. Calling.